I'm Robin Gagnon.
And I'm Eric Gagnon, and we sell restaurants. We started the nation's largest restaurant brokerage firm, We Sell Restaurants, over a decade ago. You can find us online at WeSellRestaurants.com.
And we're also on your radio once a week with the leading authorities in this industry talking about those subjects trending in the restaurant business. Tweet your own questions on our topic while we're on the air to our Twitter handle, Sell Restaurants. Post them on our Facebook page, facebook.com/WeSellRestaurants. If we don't get to your questions, we will definitely follow up with you on social media.
Our goal is to satisfy your appetite for acquisition, feed the need for restaurant reality, and serve up a recipe for business success. If you have ideas for our show or comments, email me. My email address is eric, E-R-I-C, at WeSellRestaurants.com. Today's topic is, can I franchise my restaurant?
Oh, and I'm supposed to jump in here and tell you that we're joined by two distinguished guests who have years of experience in providing legal service and franchise consulting for operators that want to franchise their company, both domestically and internationally. Hey, let's face it, franchising is not easy. Not only do you need a provable concept, but there's so many controls you have to set in place before you even think about expanding your company.
That's right, and joining us today we have two unbelievable guests. First one is Kay Ainsley. She's the Managing Director of MSA Worldwide, which provides domestic and international franchise consulting services to clients within the retail, restaurant, business-to-business, and service industries. Kay consults with companies on utilizing franchising both in the U.S. and internationally to achieve their goals. She assists companies in setting objectives, developing strategy, and creating executive plan for establishing or expanding a franchise program, brand building, franchise relationship, and restructuring or exiting of existing programs. That's a lot of stuff. She also provides expert witness and litigation support services. Her clients range from companies from Fortune 50 to small startups. Kay is active in the franchise industry. She has served as the chair of the Supplier Forum for the International Franchise Association and was a member of the executive committee of the IFA board of director, and she's also on the board of Professional Athletes Franchising Initiative. He is a frequent speaker for the IFA and other professional organizations in the United States and internationally. She has written numerous articles on franchising and is often quoted in the press regarding marketing and franchising issues. Kay, welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
We are also joined by attorney and franchising expert Bill Hasty, who is the owner of William D. Hasty Jr. PC. Bill has over 40 years' experience as a business law attorney, and 50% of his practice is comprised of franchise law. He represents franchisors in the formation and operation of their franchise system. Bill's balance of practice is concentrated on business, corporation, and transaction law closely related to franchising. He has been recognized by the Birmingham Business Journal as Best of the Bar by Franchise Law. Bill was also named by Birmingham Magazine as the top attorney for franchise law. Bill, we're so pleased to have you on board.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, well, let's start out by asking Kay a few questions. Kay, everybody always is so fascinated by the idea of franchising. So let me ask you this. Should an operator invest in hiring a franchise consultant, or is this a do-it-yourself business?
I would invest in hiring someone to give you some advice before you get started in franchising. The way you structure your franchise program at the very beginning, as I'm sure Bill can tell us, often affects your ability to manage and grow and change your system as you go on. And if you haven't taken the time up front to really think through, not only where your business is today, but where you want it to be in 5, 10, 15 years, then you often start out with the wrong strategy. And making changes in a franchise system can be extremely difficult going down the road. So I would hire a professional. I would take the time to really think it through before I got started in franchising and make sure that the agreements I have in place allow me to manage my business the way I want it to be managed. As a quick example, if you look at the franchise agreements for McDonald's and Burger King, you might think that they would be very similar. They both sell pretty much the same product mix. They're both located in pretty much the same locations, but their agreements are very, very different.
That's a great set of information. And Bill, I'm sure you want to weigh in on that as well. What is your thought process on bringing those professionals on board?
Well, I think that's critical in the process. definitely not a do-it-yourself type venture, simply because of the regulation that the Federal Trade Commission places on the offer of franchises. So you certainly need to be in compliance. You need a good accountant to provide audited financials down the road. I can't imagine doing this by yourself.
That's a good point, Bill. And let me ask you this. People think, people look at McDonald's, like Kay mentioned, and say, that's an easy way to collect what I call mailbox money. You just open it up, it will come, and I just go, a couple of days a week, pick up my money. Tell our listeners out there, what are the most common mistakes that new franchisors make when they look at that and try to replicate that?
Well, first of all, you take a restaurant operator, they have a difficult time transitioning from being a restaurant operator to a franchisor, simply because the issues are much different. So they have to evaluate up front whether they have the ability to make that transition. In order to franchise a restaurant, I often tell my clients that you have to be profitable to start with. You have to have a real good track record, 1, 2 to 3 years of business history, and you have to have a mark that you can protect. You combine those with the transition into managing the franchise relationship. Those are very important decisions that a restaurant owner needs to make before they try to franchise.
So, Kay, let's piggyback on that a little bit, because, that need to be profitable, have a good track record, and have this mark to protect. I think some restaurant operators get a little bit of concern that they've got this secret sauce, this secret recipe for success, and if they franchise, they kind of put that all out there and it can be poached upon. So how does a restaurant owner actually protect what they have going right for them, their secret ingredients to success, if you will, if they franchise?
Well, there are a couple ways. Number one, if you can have your secret sauce pre-made or your secret spices, we're working with a restaurateur right now who has his own seasoning sauce or seasoning salt mix for his chicken. And the plan is to have that made either in-house or by a third party, so the franchisees will never have the recipe. They'll have it come to them. And that's beneficial not only in protecting the secrets, the trade secrets of the business, but also in ensuring the consistency. If you look at the success of McDonald's, it's because a Big Mac tastes like a Big Mac tastes like a Big Mac wherever you have it in the world. And that's one of the benefits of franchising, and it's also one of the ways you can protect your trade secrets.
Go ahead. I didn't mean to cut you off, but that's actually very good information.
Franchise agreements also have confidentiality clauses in there. And although it's tough to get the smoke back in the chimney once the secret is out, your franchisees are obligated to protect that confidentiality going forward. So that's another way, by legal agreement. And generally, if a franchisor finds out someone has released trade secrets, that's grounds for terminating the agreement.
That's a very good point, and this is why we have UK today, and we'll also have your legal counterpart here to talk to us about. Bill, tell us about enforcement and protection, because it is, if somebody has something to be franchised, which a lot of people don't, they think they do, but they don't until they consult with someone like Kay or someone like Bill and kind of go through a testing process to actually understand if they have something to be franchised. But the enforcement of the franchise agreement, Bill, varies. Even if it's a federally registered document, it varies by state. Is that correct? Give us a little bit of information on that.
Well, just to give you an overview of the regulation, Eric, franchising throughout the United States is regulated by a Federal Trade Commission rule, which requires the franchisor to provide comprehensive information to a prospective franchisee in the form of a franchise disclosure document. It is, you don't file that document with the FTC, but you are required to give it to the prospective franchisee within certain time limits. In addition to the FTC, there are 14 states located primarily in the Northeast, Midwest, and Far West that require you to register that franchise disclosure document and also to adapt your document so that it complies with the applicable state law. Everywhere else, you can simply use the franchise disclosure document as a disclosure tool and of course, get a receipt so that you can prove that you have provided them the information.
So there is actually, there's legal requirements and just really good business practices and process requirements, and that's why it's great to bring professionals on board to help. And Kay, one thing that I know that a lot of consultants do is they assist with the franchise manual. What can you tell us about a franchise manual and how important that is to a new franchisor?
I would say it is absolutely critical to a new franchisor to have well-written manuals that not only teach the franchisee how to operate the business on a day-to-day basis, but also provide the policies and procedures for managing and operating the business to the franchisor's standards. The other thing about operations manuals is if they're done properly and if they work with the franchise agreement, they allow the franchisor to evolve the system over time by making changes to the operations agreement. So there are things that we would not have in a typical contract, but we would provide the information in the manual. The contract then refers to the manual, and the franchisor can evolve their system by updating the manual. So not only at the beginning is it important to have good operations manuals, but throughout the term of the franchise agreement, it's important that the franchisor keep those manuals up to date.
And you mentioned a term early on, consistency. That operations manual is what makes that franchise be able to be replicated and provide that consistency of service, whether you're dealing with a franchise that's in Boca Raton, Florida, or someone in California, correct?
Correct. The other thing about operations manuals that we're doing a lot more of today is putting them online so that they're easily accessible by the franchisor and then certain members of the franchisor's staff, or franchisee staff, we talked earlier about the need to protect trade secrets. And if your manuals are online, you can set them up so that certain employees are granted access to certain sections of the manual, which also helps to protect your trade secrets.
Well, that's very good idea, very interesting way to do it, a very progressive way. We, as both of you know, and some listeners know, we franchised and resell restaurants a few years ago, and we are a franchisor, baby franchisor, Robin and I, but we've learned one thing is, Kay, what you do, like the policy and manuals and operations manual, is also going to be very well connected excuse me, to the disclosure document. So we know that our attorneys work very closely with our franchise consultant to make sure that the two documents are actually talking to each other and it makes sense. Is that correct, Bill? Is that something you see a lot, that is usually a failure in the process of franchising?
Well, they do have to be consistent, and just following up on what Kay said, that the manual is absolutely critical to the success of the system. And I might add that she offers a very valuable service in representing clients. It's oftentimes difficult for me to get them to a person that can prepare a manual. I mean, a franchisor can stand there and say, yes, I've got it all in my mind. I can tell a franchisee what to do, but the thought of putting that on paper petrifies them. So finding a person that can prepare a good, consistent manual is very difficult.
Eric and I are smiling because we're remembering the days of being shadowed by someone as they tried to figure out what are the process steps in the We Sell Restaurants model so that we could get our own ops manual done. So I think that's absolutely on target.
Right. Kate, tell us about some of the most critical factor for a franchisor to be successful. Because, I mean, you see out there everywhere, franchise your business for next to nothing, and seems to be easy to get a manual and a disclosure document, but there's more to it, correct?
Yes, I would say that the biggest thing is that the franchisor be well capitalized. You don't want to spend money with a consultant and an attorney and get your documents done and then not have the money to do a good operations manual, not have the money to go out and actively recruit good franchisees. And you don't want to be in a position where you've got to take the next guy that walks through the door to get that initial fee in order to pay your bills. So that becomes critical. I think the biggest thing, though, is choosing the right people to be your franchisees.
Absolutely.
The two are related because if you've got to have that next check coming in, then you may be forced to take people that you wouldn't otherwise take as a franchisee. And your first franchisees will make or break the system. I always tell people it's easy to sell the first franchises because you've got people that want to be in on the ground floor and they're perhaps customers or they've heard of you before. But as Bill will tell you, those people are now going to be listed in your disclosure document going forward. So that second or third group of franchisees coming in has the luxury of calling the first group and saying, how's it going? Are you making money? Is the franchisor providing the support they promised? Is this a good business model? And if it is, then you've got a good stiff wind behind your back and your franchisees will be your greatest salespeople. And if it's not, then you're in trouble.
Yeah, and I think, Bill, you wanted to weigh in on that, too, because I heard that sort of amen coming from the chorus about choosing the right franchisees.
I tell my franchise clients that is probably the most important decision that they make, and that it's so critical to check their backgrounds and grill them pretty good about their desire to operate a restaurant under your system. Oftentimes they won't be honest with you, and you end up making a bad decision. But it is very critical that franchisee be a person that's going to fit in and work the system the way you want them to.
And we talked a little bit about money and saying that, you need to be well capitalized. Is there a rule of thumb about the amount of capital that someone should have before they embark on franchising, and or the number of successful locations they should have up and running in your mind? And Bill, you want to take that first, and then maybe Kay can weigh in as well.
Well, I don't. I think you can start franchising by having a single location. I don't think that number of locations governs whether or not you franchise your system or not. But you certainly have to have the capital. Let me say that getting into the franchise business is not inexpensive. You have to pay a lawyer to draft your contracts and prepare this franchise disclosure document. You have to pay accountants to prepare your financial statements. You have to pay other consultants like Kay to prepare a good manual for your system. So I would say that you need to be in a position to pay all of that as it becomes due, and to provide the initial services to the franchisee, including his initial fee. But
Okay, what do you think about that? Do you have anything to add to that? Or?
Actually, I think Bill covered it pretty well. There is no magic number. I wish there was. It would make all of our jobs a lot easier. I have seen people successfully franchise with only one location open and operating, and then I have seen people that have 4 or 5 which you would think would give them a better start, not be as successful. I think in terms of money, there is no particular number. Certainly your current business has to be profitable, and you've got to be able to do all of the things that Bill listed, and not be in a position where you think that you've got to have that next initial fee in order to pay your bill.
We had a folks on the show a few weeks ago that were the Tom and Cheese concept. So they were named Hot Concept by Nation's Restaurant News, and then they landed on network television on the Shark Tank. And so they kind of had the opposite issue with success. They told us they had over 7,000 franchise inquiries in the first year. So you have to be careful how much success you wish for, because you also have to be able to scale your operation to handle that level of inquiries, correct?
Yes. And that's another pitfall of early franchising. I'm so excited. I'm here in Georgia, and I'm so excited to get my first franchisee, and that person happens to be in Seattle, Washington. It's a long distance to start providing support. So the closer you get to home, the easier it is to provide support to those early franchisees and ensure their success. You can be a victim of your own success when you've got 7,000 leads coming in the early days.
Bill, would you agree with that?
I do. I refer to that Washington franchisee as geographically undesirable. You do, and you got to remember that if you're getting that number of inquiries, you're probably getting inquiries from residents of states where you have those franchise registration laws, and you want to be able to respond to those people that you cannot sell a franchise in their state, and be on record as having done that.
I think we're going to need to break right here. We are going to come back and continue this fascinating discussion about franchising, because there are lots of people out there in our audience that are very interested in expanding their business model through franchising, particularly if they own a successful restaurant. I want to thank today's Restaurant News, the food service industry newspaper, one of our sponsors. This trade service newspaper for the food service industry is published in Georgia and Florida. This is Eric and Robin Gagnon. We are the Restaurant Brokers. We'll return with a discussion on franchising your restaurant with our industry experts right after the break.